And I strongly urge all Americans to take precautions, including reviewing the State Department's travel advisories before they travel overseas.
Could there be a destiny graver than death itself? Is it conceivable that in some instances, a lawbreaker might prefer the solemnity of capital punishment over the prospect of lifelong incarceration? Although it may seem far-fetched, certain correctional institutions around the globe present conditions so harsh that they make the death sentence appear as an act of mercy. These are jails overwhelmed with horror so profound it might unsettle your very core. In this video, we are about to embark on an exploration of the 10 most dreadful prisons on this planet. Brace yourself, for we are on the verge of diving into the grim and gruesome depths. Number 10. The Diyarbakir Prison. The prison of Diyarbakir in Turkey is an epitome of human rights violations, becoming notorious during the 1980s and 90s for its horrifically brutal regime. Countless Kurdish men and women endured extreme forms of cruelty, leading to its reputation as the world's most dreadful prison. In recent times, though it's now considered one of the worst, the situation has tragically worsened. Not only does the prison hold the dregs of society, but alarmingly, children are also incarcerated within its dreadful walls. The detainees endure a wide spectrum of torment, encompassing both physical and psychological torment. Physical torment involves brutal beatings, violation, disfigurement, being coerced into consuming excrement, and even genital electrocution. On the psychological front, the degradation knows no bounds. Prisoners are made to salute the director's dog, participate in random, terrifying mock executions, and are forced to bathe in unsanitary sewerage. The dire conditions have led to desperate measures. Hunger strikes have become a common form of protest, often tragically culminating in the death of the protesters due to starvation. To underscore the severity of the situation, recently, 4 inmates self-immolated, and another, in a heart-wrenching act of defiance, set his cell ablaze before taking his own life. Number 9. The Patak Island Prison. Known as Russia's Alcatraz, Patak Island Prison is a place that could strike fear even into the devil's heart. This ominous fire island sits in isolation on the expansive Nosavero Lake, housing a mere 193 prisoners. But these aren't just any prisoners. They are all serving life sentences, emblematic of the most dangerous and hardened criminals in Russia. The environment within the prison is nothing short of brutal. Each inmate is confined to a cramped 2-person cell for an overwhelming 23 hours a day, ever alert for potential weapons or escape routes. The thought of escape, however, is practically futile. Overcrowding is a severe issue exacerbated by the government's crackdown on drug trafficking. This leads to a bizarre situation where offenders, originally arrested for minor infractions like public assembly or illicit literature, are forced to coexist with inmates sentenced to death. Life in Patak Island Prison is a grim existence. New inmates are subjected to wearing iron chains for the first 3 months of their sentence. The food served is often teeming with maggots, and access to drinking water is a privilege, not a right. Tragically, avoiding incarceration in this prison isn't as simple as being law-abiding. A British man found this out the hard way a few years ago. He was assaulted by a gang, and despite losing an eye and suffering other injuries, he was sentenced to serve time in Patak Island Prison for defending himself. Number 8. Barrios Prison. Imagine a place even more horrifying than hell itself. This is Aldiki Udad, widely recognized as the most perilous prison in all of El Salvador. Its danger arises from the notorious inhabitants it cages within its walls, members of the world's most infamous gangs, 13 and Barrio 18. From 2004 to 2015, this dreadful place was exclusively for gang members, as non-members faced a high risk of sudden unprovoked death. However, even being a member of one of these gangs doesn't guarantee safety. In fact, gang affiliation often becomes a secondary concern due to the appallingly squalid living conditions and severe overcrowding. The struggle for basic human necessities such as food or a place to sleep can quickly escalate into a lethal confrontation. This high-stakes environment has cultivated a reputation for lawlessness and violence that is so potent it even strikes fear into the hearts of the prison guards. This intimidation factor has led to an alarming situation where the prison is essentially run by the very inmates it is supposed to contain. Consequently, the guards are often too terrified to set foot inside, leaving the prison system at the mercy of its most dangerous occupants. Number 7. Black Dolphin Prison. Life in a Russian prison is universally acknowledged to be grueling, but the high-security Black Dolphin prison takes this to an entirely new level. Positioned on the border with Kazakhstan, Black Dolphin is among Russia's oldest correctional facilities. Its distinctive name is derived from a statue constructed by the inmates themselves, situated at the front of the building. Despite the creativity behind the statue, the prison is anything but a symbol of freedom. The only true escape from Black Dolphin is death, as the prison exclusively houses inmates serving life sentences. Approximately 700 inmates inhabit this prison, collectively responsible for roughly 3,500 murders. This averages out to a chilling 5 victims per inmate. But murder is not the only horrific crime associated with these inmates. Black Dolphin is also home to cannibals, extreme assault perpetrators, psychopaths, terrorists, and pedophiles. These inmates are confined to 2-person bare-bones cells of merely 50 square feet, secured by triple steel doors and under relentless 24-hour surveillance. Guards conduct checks every 15 minutes. Inmate movement outside their cells is minimal and strictly controlled. When they do leave, they are blindfolded and forced to walk bent at the waist, ensuring they never gain a sense of their surroundings. The prison lacks communal spaces like a yard or a cafeteria, with prisoners consuming a simple diet of soup and bread within their gloomy cells. If hell had a terrestrial counterpart in the form of a prison, Black Dolphin would undoubtedly be a leading candidate. Number 6. Mendoza Prison. Argentina's Mendoza prison houses the country's 90 most dangerous convicts within its Pavilion 5. Such is the intensity of the danger within this wing that even the most hardened guards shy away from entering. Instead, they resort to leaving the inmates' meals at predetermined locations near the door. While this might sound intriguingly daring to some, the reality is far from glamorous. The prison is plagued with severe overcrowding. A staggering 1,600 inmates inhabit a facility intended to house just 600. Beds are non-existent, forcing prisoners to sleep on the floor where they are susceptible to sporadic and brutal forms of torture. The horror doesn't stop there. Basic sanitation is woefully lacking with no toilets available. Inmates are reduced to relieving themselves in plastic bags and bottles. The prison's corridors have devolved into open sewers, strewn with garbage, human waste, and filth. Conditions have reached such a horrific low that some prisoners resorted to sewing their mouths shut in a desperate protest, demanding better living conditions. But the nightmare of Mendoza prison doesn't end there. The food provided is little more than gruel. The weak, slow, or those unable to fend for themselves often go hungry, and far too often these individuals die under what the authorities conveniently label as mysterious circumstances. Number 5. Guldani Prison. Despite claims of improvements and cessation of violence, the chilling past of Guldani Prison casts a long, haunting shadow. In 2012, a shocking video was leaked by a 35-year-old former prison guard turned whistleblower. The footage showcased the horrifying reality of what inmates endured under the brutal reign of the guards. The explicit content is too distressing to present here, but it's important to understand the systemic abuse that had been perpetrated for decades. Night after night, random inmates were subjected to atrocious acts, including being violated with broom handles, a scene grotesquely captured in the leaked videos. The abuse ranged from beatings and drownings to intentional bone breaking and burning, all administered by the sadistically inclined guards. It was nothing short of institutionalized torture in the 21st century. One former inmate poignantly recalled his personal nightmare.
"They tore off my fingernails, damaged my skull, broke my leg bones, ribs, nose, and teeth. I am 43 years old, but I look like an old man. I often fall down while I am walking."
While current reports suggest that conditions have improved and the torture has ceased, the brutal legacy of Guldani Prison is not easily forgotten. Despite these assurances, one would be understandably hesitant to verify these claims firsthand. Number 4. Gitarama Central Prison. While overcrowding is a prevailing issue in many prisons worldwide, none suffer this crisis quite as acutely as Gitarama's central prison in Rwanda. The situation is utterly unbearable. An astounding 8,000 inmates are crammed into a facility originally designed to accommodate just over 1,300. This staggering number of prisoners are left to negotiate for the scant space available. Securing a spot to lie down is considered a luxury, leaving many inmates to stand all day or bargain with those who have claimed sections of the ground. But this contested ground is far from inviting. It's often damp, littered with raw human waste, creating a breeding ground for disease. This severe overcrowding has precipitated a host of other grave issues. Many prisoners have perished from disease or suffocation. Any injury, even a minor foot wound, can rapidly escalate into a severe case of gangrene, forcing inmates to choose between self-amputation, the risk of death, or watching their body part decay and detach. The grim reality of Gitarama's central prison extends even further into the macabre. Starvation has driven inmates to commit acts of cannibalism. This horrifying practice may be even more widespread than known, as the activities within the prison's walls are poorly documented. The prison guards, desensitized and detached, have been manipulated into viewing the prisoners as less than human. Last year, 2,000 individuals died in Rwandan prisons, with the vast majority of these deaths occurring within the oppressive walls of Gitarama's central prison. Number 3. Kamiti Maximum Security Prison. This prison is distinguished by its notorious reputation as the residence for the most hardened criminals. Constructed in 1954 during the British colonial era, it was designed as an old-style colonial penal institution to detain offenders during the state of emergency declared in October 1952. It retains its original gallows, but today, it's more of a dystopian nightmare than it was over half a century ago. A facility intended for 1,200 inmates now houses nearly 3,000, leading to extreme overcrowding. This overpopulation has resulted in the rampant spread of infectious diseases such as HIV, AIDS, syphilis, tuberculosis, and many others that should have been easily contained. The situation is further exacerbated by pervasive unrest and corruption. As the government's favored spot for stashing away political dissidents, corruption runs rampant, with the prison guards as complicit as the inmates in these illicit activities. Moreover, given the significant number of uneducated prisoners, a complex hierarchy has emerged within the prison system. This has fostered a culture of fraud, where numerous prisoners swindle unsuspecting Kenyan citizens outside the prison walls. The Kamiti Maximum Security Prison has devolved into a hotbed of chaos. Only those with the sharpest minds, bravest hearts, and most ruthless will can hope to survive within its confining walls. Number 2. Bang Kwang Central Prison. Bangkok, Thailand is home to a prison known for its challenging conditions, particularly due to the fact that a number of its inmates were once tourists. The 24-person rooms are difficult to navigate, making even simple tasks like using the restroom arduous, and overcrowding is a major issue due to the government's efforts to combat drug trafficking. This has led to tourists being housed alongside death row prisoners, even for minor offenses like reading certain books, gathering in groups of 5, or eating a sandwich in public. Life within the prison is notably severe for its occupants. New inmates are required to wear iron chains for the first 3 months of their sentence, and the provided food is often riddled with maggots. Access to clean drinking water is scarce, further exacerbating the difficult living conditions. It is important to note that even law-abiding citizens and tourists are not exempt from the risk of imprisonment. For example, a few years ago, a British man was assaulted by a Thai gang, and despite sustaining significant injuries, including losing an eye, he was still incarcerated in this prison for defending himself. Number 1. Camp 22. Camp 22 is a complex network of prison camps spread throughout North Korea, housing approximately 200,000 inmates. Survivors who have endured the extremely harsh conditions within these camps have drawn comparisons to the atrocities of the Holocaust. Starvation is a constant threat for prisoners, who receive a meager diet of cornmeal and cabbage daily. To stave off malnutrition, inmates must resort to consuming rats and insects. The demand for rats as a food source became so high that their population dwindled significantly. Each year, an estimated 20 to 25% of the prison population succumbs to the harsh living conditions. The treatment of inmates by prison guards is often cruel and inhumane. For instance, young girls born in the camp have been subjected to horrific acts, such as being fed to dogs for training purposes. Prisoners may be subjected to brutality at the hands of guards, and any escape attempts can result in severe consequences for their entire family, even those unaware of the plans. Pregnancy is strictly prohibited within the camp. Pregnant women found to be in violation of this rule may face disturbing punishments, including the removal of their unborn child and subsequent execution. Life in Camp 22 is characterized by unrelenting suffering, and for many, death is considered a merciful escape from the torment. Here concludes the episode of the 10 most dreadful prisons on this planet. Until next time, see ya.